Commander Forlag's office aboard the Logic's Edge was a testament to Cthar minimalism, stark, functional, and meticulously organized. Every item had its designated place. Every surface gleamed with the characteristic polish favored by a species. Yet, amidst this ordered environment, several anomalies stood out. A twisted piece of polished metal rested on his desk, its purpose unclear. Tucked away on a far wall hung an ancient star chart of Earth, its constellations labeled in both Cthar script and the native human languages. Lieutenant Zarel stood at attention, datapad clutched perhaps too tightly in his four-fingered hand. Fresh from the academy, his carapace still gleamed with the polished sheen of youth, unmarred by the scars of battle or the dullness that came with age and experience. His eyes, multifaceted and bright, reflected both intelligence and an eagerness that made Forlag feel suddenly ancient. "The patrol route analysis you requested, Commander," Zarel said, voice modulated to the perfect pitch of Cthar military formality. Forlag took the datapad with a slow, deliberate movement. His face, angular and weathered, remained expressionless as he scanned the information, but his deep-set eyes revealed a weariness that transcended physical fatigue. The scars that ran across his face and neck, some the pale silver of old wounds, others the darker hue of more recent injuries, told their own story of a career spent in the crucible of conflict. "Thorough," Forlag finally commented, setting the datapad down beside the twisted metal fragment. "But I note you've classified the human settlements in the Xylos buffer zone as standard risk assessment category 3. Your reasoning?" Zarel straightened, clearly pleased at the opportunity to demonstrate his academic knowledge. "As per Galactic Council protocols, sir, humans are classified as Level 3 unconventional warfare specialists, capable of unpredictable tactical innovations, but generally manageable within established diplomatic and military frameworks." Something flickered in Forlag's expression, so brief that had Zarel not been watching closely, he would have missed it entirely. Disapproval? Amusement? Perhaps even pity? "I see," Forlag said quietly. His gaze drifted to the twisted metal on his desk. "And what do you make of this?" Zarel looked at the object with undisguised curiosity. It was clearly not Cthar in design. Too asymmetrical, its purpose indecipherable. "I cannot identify its function, Commander. It has none. Not anymore." Forlag lifted the piece, turning it so that light played across its polished surface. "This is a fragment from a Xylos incident. Are you familiar with it?" "Of course, sir. A minor border dispute resolved through standard diplomatic channels after a brief skirmish. It's covered in the Academy's Modern Galactic Peacekeeping module." Forlag made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it held no humor. "Is that what they teach now? A minor border dispute?" He set the metal down with unexpected gentleness. "Lieutenant, what I'm about to tell you isn't in any Academy text. It isn't in the official Council records. But before you begin patrolling this sector, before you interact with any human vessels or outposts, you need to understand what you're truly dealing with." Zarel's posture shifted subtly, uncertainty creeping into his previously confident stance. "Sir, your classification, Level 3 Unconventional Warfare Specialists, is a dangerous oversimplification. Council complacency." Forlag's voice hardened it. "What they taught you at the Academy is sanitized data, Lieutenant. It doesn't reflect reality." Zarel remained silent, but his antennae twitched forward, a sign of intense focus among the Cthar. "Sit," Forlag commanded, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. As Zarel complied, Forlag activated the privacy field around his office. The ambient sounds of the ship faded to silence, and the transparent wall looking out onto the corridor dimmed to opacity. "I'm going to tell you about humans, Lieutenant. Not what the diplomatic corps wants you to believe. Not what fits neatly into Council classification systems. But what I've seen, what I've experienced." Forlag's scarred hand moved unconsciously to touch a particularly prominent mark on his neck. "What I've survived." The lighting in Forlag's office dimmed as he activated a small hollow projector on his desk. A swirling nebula materialized between them, a vast cloud of cosmic dust and gas illuminated by the light of distant stars. The Horsehead Nebula Campaign, Forlag said, his voice taking on a distant quality. Official records list it as a standard containment operation against Crichton Empire expansion. 16 cycles ago, I was a tactical officer aboard the dreadnought Rational Discourse. The hologram shifted, displaying a massive ship of classic Cthar design, all clean lines and mathematical precision, its hull arranged in perfect geometric patterns. The Crichton, Forlag continued, are classified as Level 4 threats, hive-mind insectoids with biological weapons capabilities and overwhelming numerical advantage. The hologram changed again, showing chitinous creatures with multiple limbs and compound eyes. Their tactics are straightforward: swarm assaults, sacrificial waves to deplete ammunition and shields, followed by concentrated strikes at weakened points. Brutal, but predictable. Zarel nodded. This aligned with his academy training. We were winning, Forlag stated flatly. Our technological superiority was sufficient to counter their numbers. Our logical battle formations adapted perfectly to their swarm tactics. Until he paused, the hologram shifting to show a medical station, its design clearly Cthar. Until they targeted our medical evacuation centers. Zarel's antennae flattened against his head in shock. But that violates the Galactic Convention on. The Crichton don't recognize council conventions, Lieutenant, Forlag interrupted. They operate on their own brutal logic. Wound your enemy, then destroy their capacity to heal, maximizing casualties and demoralizing survivors. Tactically sound, if morally reprehensible. The hologram zoomed out, showing Crichton ships surrounding the medical station. Our reinforcements were hours away. Command calculated casualty projections at 97.3% for all medical personnel and wounded. Forlag's voice remained steady, but his hands had clenched into fists. That's when Task Force Chimera intervened. The human contingent, Zarel asked. 5 ships, observation status only, with limited logistical support capacity according to Council Treaty. Forlag's expression darkened. They didn't wait for Cthar command approval. They didn't consult the Council. They just acted. The hologram shifted again, this time showing small, angular ships of human design moving toward the medical station at tremendous speed. We expected a direct assault. It would have been futile suicide against such numbers. But that's not what they did. Forlag touched a control, and the hologram displayed something that made Zarel lean forward in confusion. Hundreds of ghostly ship outlines appeared throughout the Crichton formation. Perfect replicas of Crichton vessels, indistinguishable from the real ones, but slightly transparent in the holographic display to mark them as illusions. Force projection technology, Forlag explained. Advanced holographic systems coupled with mass emitters to create false sensor readings. The humans called them ghost ships. Suddenly, from the Crichton perspective, their own forces appeared to be turning against each other, firing on friendly vessels. The hologram showed chaos erupting throughout the Crichton fleet as ships began firing on the phantom threats in their midst. Simultaneously, Forlag continued. They broadcast disruptive signals directly into the Crichton collective neural network, based on anatomical intelligence we didn't even know they possessed. His voice held a note of grudging admiration. Mass hallucinations, paranoia, command structure collapse. Zarel watched in fascination as the once orderly Crichton fleet dissolved into disarray. And then came the sound. Forlag's voice dropped to near whisper. Infrasonic weapons tuned specifically to Crichton physiology. Below the hearing threshold for most species, but to the Crichton, it triggered primal fear responses. Biological disruption. The equivalent of hearing your own death approaching, but being unable to locate its source. The hologram showed Crichton ships breaking formation, some fleeing, others firing wildly at both real and imaginary targets. They didn't destroy ships, Lieutenant. They destroyed the will to fight. Forlag deactivated the hologram, leaving the office in dimness. Within hours, The Crichton fleet was in full retreat. The medical station was saved with minimal casualties, and Task Force Chimera vanished from our sensors as quickly as they had appeared. He reactivated the lights, fixing Zarel with an intense stare. The official report cites internal tactical disarray within Crichton forces as the reason for our victory. No mention of human intervention. No acknowledgement of what they did or how they did it. Forlag leaned forward. That's what you need to understand about humans, Lieutenant. They don't fight like we do. They don't think like we do. When Cathar wage war, we target military assets, infrastructure, command capabilities, logical priorities. Humans, he shook his head. Humans target the mind, the will, the spirit. They understand fear as a weapon in ways that our logic-centered minds struggle to comprehend, and they wield it with terrifying efficiency. Zarel sat in silence for several moments, processing this information. Finally, he asked, why would the Council classify such capabilities as merely level 3? Politics, Forlag replied with undisguised contempt. Humans are relatively new to the galactic stage. Their inclusion in the Council remains controversial. Acknowledging their true capabilities would necessitate a re-evaluation of power structures that many established species find uncomfortable. Forlag stood, moving to the small viewport that showed the stars of the Xylos buffer zone. But that's just one example, Lieutenant. One facet of what makes humans such unique allies and such devastating potential enemies. The projector on Forlag's desk activated again, this time displaying a massive installation built into the side of a barren planet. Its architecture was a blend of styles, the geometric precision of Cathar design intermixed with the more organic aesthetics of other Council species. Kepler, 186F Fortress, Forlag said, a major mining outpost in the Outer Rim, strategically vital for its neutronium deposits. His scarred finger traced the outline of the fortress. I was stationed there as a security liaison during the Golemite incursion. The hologram shifted to display enormous crystalline entities, vaguely humanoid in shape, but composed entirely of mineral structures that glowed with inner energy. They stood at least 3 times the height of an average Cathar. Golemites, Forlag explained, silicon-based life forms with extreme durability. Conventional weapons merely chip away at their outer layers. The only effective method of neutralization is overloading their central energy cores, which requires getting past their exterior first. The hologram showed the massive entities approaching the fortress in a relentless, slow-moving wave. Standard defensive tactics proved ineffective, Forlag continued. Our barrage fire caused minimal damage. Blockades were simply pushed aside or crushed. Fixed defense lines were overwhelmed. We had multiple species defending that fortress: Arcturon shield specialists, Voss heavy weapons teams, Medusan tactical coordinators, and 1 unit of human combat engineers. The image zoomed in on a section of the fortress where small figures in environmental suits worked feverishly. While the rest of us followed defensive doctrine, repaired damage, reinforced positions, maintained structural integrity, the humans began actively dismantling parts of the fortress. Zarel's antennae shot up in surprise. Dismantling? Their own defensive position. Precisely. Forlag's tone held an undercurrent of reluctant respect. The commander of the Allied forces was furious. Demanded they stop. But the human combat engineer Captain Reyes simply said, "We're not destroying the fortress. We're weaponizing it." The hologram displayed sections of the fortress being systematically taken apart, massive structural components being repositioned and reconfigured. They converted industrial mining drills into weapons, repurposed ventilation systems into plasma distribution networks, even rerouted power from auxiliary reactors to create focused energy traps. Forlag shook his head in remembered disbelief. They weren't preserving assets. They were transforming them, turning our shelter into a tomb for the enemy. The hologram showed a particularly vivid sequence. a group of human engineers deliberately sealing themselves in a mining section that was about to be overrun by Golemites. This team, Forlag said softly, knew they couldn't escape, so they chose to make their deaths count. They triggered the geothermal taps beneath that section, causing an artificial magma eruption that engulfed dozens of Golemites, halting the enemy advance on that flank. Zarel's voice was subdued. Self-termination to achieve tactical advantage. A concept considered illogical in Cathar military doctrine, Forlag confirmed, yet undeniably effective in this context. The hologram advanced to show the final moments of the battle. Golemites had penetrated the innermost defenses, towering crystalline figures moving inexorably through the fortress corridors. When the final defensive line was breached, Forlag continued, the human engineer commander, rather than ordering a last stand, directed all surviving personnel to the only remaining functional escape vessels. Then she manually triggered an overload in the fortress's main reactor core. The hologram displayed a massive explosion that consumed the fortress and most of the surrounding Golemite forces. The timing was calculated precisely, Forlag noted. Just enough delay for the evacuation ships to reach safe distance. Maximum destructive effect against the enemy concentration. He deactivated the hologram once more. The fortress was destroyed, Lieutenant. A strategic asset worth billions in council currency, vaporized. But 82% of the defending forces survived, and the Golemite advance was halted completely. Forlag returned to his desk, eyes fixed on Zarel. Another lesson. About humans, they adapt within desperation. They think in terms of destroy to preserve, and they will sacrifice all material assets, even themselves, in calculated measures to achieve greater strategic objectives. A devastating logic that Cathar minds struggle to accept, yet cannot deny the effectiveness of. Zarel remained silent, his earlier confidence visibly shaken. The comfortable certainties of academy training seemed increasingly inadequate in the face of Forlag's first-hand accounts. There's more, Forlag said, his voice growing quieter. A more personal encounter. The office lights dimmed further as Forlag initiated a different kind of record. Not a tactical hologram, but a medical file. The image of a human appeared, male, wearing a flight suit with insignia that Zarel didn't recognize. The human was unconscious on a medical bed, various monitoring devices attached to his body, severe burns and lacerations visible on the exposed skin. Captain Eris Thorne, Forlag identified. Pilot of a human military craft shot down during a minor skirmish near the Cetus Arm. My ship, the Empirical Truth, retrieved his escape pod. He was severely injured, comatose. According to protocol, we provided medical treatment and held him as a potential prisoner of war, though humans and Cathar were not officially in a state of conflict. Forlag's hand moved unconsciously to a scar on his neck, a distinctive pattern unlike his other battle marks. I assigned a junior officer to monitor him during recovery. Thorne was compliant, passive, spoke little, followed all regulations without complaint. The display changed to show surveillance footage of the human in a detention cell. He moved with careful precision, observing his surroundings with quiet attentiveness. He revealed no sensitive military information during questioning, Forlag continued, but he displayed curious behaviors. He spent hours observing ship operations through the limited viewport of his cell, repaired a non-essential device in his quarters using only basic materials, even pointed out a minor flaw in the life support system to his guard, a flaw our own engineers had overlooked. Forlag's expression darkened. Initially suspecting subterfuge, I ordered a deeper investigation into his background. We discovered Thorne wasn't merely a pilot. He was a specialist in artificial intelligence and cyber warfare, with records indicating involvement in classified operations against high-technology threats. The commander paused, seeming to wrestle with the memory. 3 days after this discovery, the Empirical Truth was attacked, not by ships or weapons, but by a self-replicating computer virus of extraordinary sophistication. Origin unknown. It paralyzed our core systems. Our experts couldn't contain the spread. Zarel leaned forward, and Thorn offered assistance from his cell. Forlag's voice held a complex mixture of emotions. Claimed he recognized the virus structure from a previous encounter. In desperation, I agreed, under strict supervision. Given limited access and working under the watchful eyes of our best technicians, he rapidly analyzed the virus, identified vulnerabilities, and wrote countermeasure code that neutralized it within hours. Forlag's gaze became distant. He worked with intense focus, remarkable efficiency, almost no emotional display whatsoever. The display showed footage of Thorn, surrounded by Cathar security personnel, fingers moving rapidly over a computer interface, his expression one of absolute concentration. After the threat was eliminated, Forlag continued. He simply requested to return to his cell. When I asked why he had helped us, an action potentially treasonous if his own species was behind the attack, he looked directly at me and spoke in perfect Cathar. Logic dictates survival. Mutual survival is optimal. He offered no further explanation. Forlag deactivated the display, and the lights returned to normal. The incident was classified. Thorn was eventually returned to human authorities in a prisoner exchange. But that encounter taught me something crucial about humans, Lieutenant. He leaned forward, his scarred face intense in the office light. Their hidden depths of knowledge and diverse capabilities. A pilot who is also an elite AI specialist. Their unsettling calm in crisis. And most importantly, their ability to apply a kind of logic that sometimes aligns with our own, but springs from a completely different ethical or pragmatic foundation, making them profoundly unpredictable as either allies or adversaries. Zarel sat in silence, processing everything he had heard. The comfortable certainties of his academy training seemed increasingly inadequate. "Why are you telling me this, Commander?" he finally asked. "If these accounts aren't in official records." "Because you'll be patrolling the Xylo's buffer zone," Forlag replied simply. "You'll encounter humans. You'll interact with them. And if you approach those interactions with the sanitized understanding provided by the Academy, you risk catastrophic miscalculation." Forlag stood, moving to the viewport again. The stars of the Xylo's sector glittered against the void. "I don't tell you these stories to instill hatred or unwarranted fear, Lieutenant. I tell you so you understand humans' true complexity and potential, both for destruction and creation, both their illogical nature by Cathar standards and their inscrutable internal logic." He turned back to face Zarel. "The danger lies not in treating humans as enemies, but in underestimating them, in applying rigid Cathar logic templates to predict their actions." His voice hardened. "They're not us, Zarel. Never forget that." Forlag returned to his desk, his movements deliberate. "The greatest paradox is this. Humans can be loyal allies, trustworthy friends even. But their cultural and psychological foundation was built through millennia of internal conflict and harsh adaptation, creating a capacity for violence and determination that always lurks beneath the surface." Zarel's antennae twitched with uncertainty. "What would you have me do with this information, Commander?" "On patrol, maintain Cathar discipline, but be flexible. Observe carefully. Report truthfully, not just data, but behaviors that seem illogical." Forlag's voice took on an instructional tone. "Respect human space and sovereignty. Enforce treaties fairly and transparently." His eyes narrowed slightly. "But always prepare for the unexpected. Always have contingencies for unpredictable reactions. Never back them into a corner unless you are absolutely certain of the consequences." Forlag reached out, touching the twisted metal fragment on his desk with unexpected gentleness. "This is from the core of the last Golemite at Kepler 186F. A reminder that sometimes the most effective logic looks like madness." He fixed Zarel with a penetrating stare. "Do you understand what I'm telling you, Lieutenant?" Zarel stood, assuming the formal posture of a Cathar officer receiving orders. He bowed his head in the traditional manner, but his eyes had lost their earlier innocence. "I believe I do, Commander." "Good." Forlag deactivated the privacy field around his office. The ambient sounds of the ship returned, the soft hum of engines, the distant murmur of crew communications. You're dismissed. Your patrol begins at 0600 ship time tomorrow. Zarel moved toward the door, but paused at the threshold. Commander, the Xylos incident. What really happened? Forlag was silent for a long moment. Perhaps that's a story for another time, Lieutenant. After you've completed your first patrol. After you've seen humans with your own eyes. Zarel nodded, then departed, leaving Forlag alone with his memories and the twisted metal fragment, a testament to battles fought and lessons learned at tremendous cost. The commander turned to gaze out at the stars of the Xylos buffer zone. Somewhere out there, human ships patrol their own borders. Human colonies thrived on terraformed worlds. Human minds devised new technologies, new tactics, new ways of survival in a universe filled with both wonders and terrors. Forlag touched the prominent scar on his neck, the one that didn't match his other battle wounds. Logic dictates survival, he murmured in the empty office, echoing Thorne's words from years ago. Mutual survival is optimal. He turned back to his work, hoping that Zarel would understand the true meaning behind his stories before facing the complex reality of human interaction. The young officer would need more than academy training to navigate the dangerous waters of the Xylos buffer zone. He would need wisdom born of experience, respect born of understanding, and caution born of knowing what humans were truly capable of, both terrible and admirable. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the concerns of those who lived among them. And somewhere in that vast tapestry of light and darkness, humans and Cthar moved along their separate but increasingly intertwined paths, each species carrying their own histories, their own scars, and their own unique understanding of the universe.